On our broadcast tonight, prosecutors finally get inside a religious facility as part of their weeks-long manhunt for the de facto owner of the Sewol-ho ferry that sank last month. Now this as another body is recovered from the sunken vessel. A Roman Catholic cardinal from South Korea visits North Korea for the first time ever, sparking speculation that his trip might be aimed at preparing for a possible visit by Pope Francis this summer. And day 2 of martial law in Thailand. Uncertainty looms over a country that's been rocked by 6 months of street protests and no properly functioning government. We speak to an expert on the ground. Early edition begins now.
I see trees of green, red
늘 남편 먼저,
I see them
늘 자식 먼저.
for me and
레이디 퍼스트라는 말을 믿고 살아온 당신. 오늘만큼은 세상 누구보다 당신이 먼저입니다.
한 분 한 분 특별하게 모시겠습니다.
Excellence in Flight, Korean Air.
It is 5 a.m. in New York, 4 p.m. in Bangkok, and 6 p.m. on Tuesday, the 21st of May here in Seoul. This is Early Edition at 6. I'm Moon Geunhye.
And I'm Daniel Che. Thank you for joining us.
We begin this Wednesday evening with the latest on the search for the de facto owner of the sunken ferry operator. Authorities have finally entered the religious compound Yoo Byung-hun was believed to be holed up in with an arrest warrant in hand.
While there's no sign of Yoo, prosecutors are combing the grounds for evidence that could be used at a future trial. Our Park Geunhye has been following this developing story.
Prosecutors and police finally made their way into the religious compound in Anseong, Gyeonggi-do province at about noon on Wednesday to execute an arrest warrant for Yoo Byung-hun, the practical owner of the Sewol-ho ferry operator. Hundreds of members of Yoo's religious cult who have been surrounding the estate for the past few days as human shields allowed only investigating prosecutors in. Investigators searching for the 73-year-old Yoo inside the 230,000 square meter compound have seen no sign of him, and they suspect that he may be hiding elsewhere, like at the home of one of his believers. So they began zeroing in on the homes of Yoo's believers and are conducting undercover operations to find him. Prosecutors are also trying to find evidence inside the compound in relation to criminal charges against the Yoo family, as they've been granted a search and seizure warrant. Wednesday's operation came after Yoo had ignored previous orders by prosecutors to show up for questioning over embezzlement, tax evasion, and malpractice charges. The authorities believe there may be some causal link there with the ferry operators' lack of investment in safety drills and personnel management. Prosecutors are also trying to bring in Yoo Dae-gyun, the eldest son of Yoo Byung-hun, on charges of tax evasion and embezzlement of funds from company affiliates owned by the Yoo family. He was last seen at Incheon International Airport buying a one-way ticket to France 3 days after the ferry accident happened last month. However, as he was already banned from travel by the authorities, he didn't board a plane. Since then, his whereabouts have been unknown. Regarding Yoo's other children staying in foreign countries who haven't responded to prosecutors' orders for questioning, the authorities are trying to get them extradited through cooperation with other countries. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And moving on to the ongoing search efforts at the Sewol-ho ferry accident site. The rescue divers recovered one more body in the early hours of this Wednesday, pushing the confirmed death toll from the disaster to 288.
36 days have now passed since the accident, and 16 people remain unaccounted for. With weak tides expected this week, more than 100 military, Coast Guard, and civilian divers are on the site for search operations. Meanwhile, President Park Geunhye returned home earlier today from her 40-hour-long trip to the UAE. but it doesn't mean rest time for the president.
No, it doesn't. She has no official schedule for the next couple of days, but she is expected to start the process of identifying a new prime minister and reshuffling her cabinet. Arirang's Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
When President Park apologized this week for the government's poor response to the ferry disaster, she chose not to mention her plans to shake up the cabinet. But as she told the families of the victims late last week, follow-up measures to the accident, including a reshuffle, are expected to speed up in the coming days.
앞으로 개각을 비롯해서 후속 조치들을 면밀하게 지금 세우고 있습니다.
Pundits are carefully looking at who will be the president's candidate for prime minister, with the current prime minister Chung Eung-won set to resign to take responsibility for the government's lax response to the ferry disaster. They say the appointment of a new prime minister will mark the starting point of the cabinet shakeup. Speculation is rife that the nomination of a new prime minister could come as early as this week, as it's already been almost a month since Chung offered to step down. Those held most responsible for the poor handling of the disaster, the ministers of Oceans and Fisheries, Public Administration and Education, are most likely to face the chop, but there are growing calls for a clean sweep. Ruling and opposition party lawmakers are demanding the entire cabinet as well as senior officials at the presidential office step down. Pundits say President Park's new government lineup will affect how the public evaluates the sincerity of her apology and will play a key role in whether she wins back public sentiment. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
So just 2 weeks ago until Koreans head to the polls for the June 4th local elections, and recent polls suggest voters living in key regions are warming to the main opposition party.
Well, analysts say this could spell a big election day victory for the New Politics Alliance for Democracy, which was, of course, formed a mere 2 months ago. Our correspondent Kim Young-gil reports on how last month's ferry disaster has given the momentum to the opposition party.
The effect of the government's poor handling of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster is being reflected in recent polling, which shows that the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy is gaining support in Seoul, Incheon, and Gyeonggi-do province. According to a poll conducted this week by TNS Korea on more than 14,000 likely voters, the ruling Saenuri Party's candidate for Seoul Mayor, Chung Mong-jun, is more than 15 points behind incumbent Mayor Park Geunhye, who was at 51% support. It's a similar story in the city of Incheon, where the ruling party mayoral candidate Yoo Jung-bok is trailing incumbent Song Young-gil of the opposition party by more than 10 percentage points. The race for governor of Gyeonggi-do province is much tighter. Just 0.9 percentage points separate Saenuri candidate Nam Kyung-pil and opposition candidate Kim Jin-pyo in the TNS Korea polling. All three local races are considered significant on the national stage, as the three areas boast about half of Korea's total population. Earning victories in these races can give a party a full head of steam heading into future legislative and presidential elections. In other important local races, such as in the conservative stronghold city of Busan and in the liberal stronghold city of Gwangju, the polling fell more along party lines. According to a survey conducted by the National Election Commission last week, 55.8% of respondents said they will vote on election day, up 1 percentage point from the 2010 local elections. Campaigning is set to begin on Thursday, and public safety has emerged as the hot-button issue in light of April's ferry disaster. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
A Roman Catholic cardinal from South Korea traveled to North Korea on this Wednesday in the first such trip at a time of rekindled animosity between the neighboring states.
Cardinal Andrew Yum-soo-jung just returned from the Kaesong Industrial Complex less than an hour ago. For more, let's go live to our correspondent Hwang Sung-hee at the Inter-Korean Transit Office. Sung-hee, what can you tell us?
Guys, Cardinal Andrew Yamsoo-jung just gave a press briefing here after returning from the Kaesong Industrial Complex. Now, upon news of his trip, many were sort of scratching their heads as to what had prompted the Cardinal to visit the joint business park. However, the Cardinal said that his visit there was an opportunity for him to really realize how closely the two cities, Seoul and Kaesong, were located. They are just 60 kilometers apart, but how distant they feel. Now, by seeing the North and the South work together at the joint business park, the Cardinal said he saw hope in the two Koreas. Now, the Cardinal did not hold Mass today at the complex, but prayed for the reconciliation of the two Koreas. Now, the trip does come amid escalating tensions on the peninsula, and many were questioning whether the trip was somewhat politically motivated, but the Cardinal's delegation said that they made no contact with North Korean officials today. Guys?
Now, Sang-hee, the Cardinal's trip comes 3 months before Pope Francis is expected to travel to South Korea for a visit, and this is fueling speculation that the Holy Father could also make a stop in the north. Now, how likely of a possibility is that?
Yes, Pope Francis is expected to make a visit to South Korea in August, and expectations are high on whether he will become the first pope to visit North Korea. Now, Pope Francis has been showing a great deal of interest in peace and reconciliation between the two Koreas, and in fact, he is expected to deliver a speech for the entire Korean peninsula when he visits in the summer. However, for now, the South Korean Catholic Church denied these speculations and said that the Pope does not have any plans to visit North Korea. And also, the Cardinal's delegation said that their trip today was made upon the request of a group of South Korean Catholics working at the complex last August. But for now, we can really see that the rare trip as a first step by the Roman Catholic Church to try to bring the two Koreas together. This has been Hwang Sang-hee reporting live from the Inter-Korean Transit Office in Paju.
It's day 2 of martial law in Thailand, and the Thai army chief is currently sitting down for talks with the leaders of rival political groups in that country.
General Prayuth Chan-o-cha had asked to meet with the acting government, the Speaker of the Senate Speaker, and two main protest factions. Analysts are watching that meeting closely for clues on whether the army will seek to extend its powers or keep them restricted to security. 6 months of political unrest in Thailand, have brought the country to the brink of recession, and there are fears of civil war.
And amid the uncertainty, South Korea expanded a travel advisory to all regions of Thailand on this Wednesday. Let's try getting a better sense of what the situation is like there on the streets of Bangkok on this second day of martial law, and what lies ahead for the Southeast Asian country.
For that, Paul Cogley joins us live via Skype from Thailand. Paul is the director at Bangkok-based risk assessment firm PQA Associates.
Paul Cogley, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, the first question that comes to my mind is that, is this a coup d'etat? I mean, we know that the military has been insisting that it's not, that it's merely restoring peace and order for people from all sides in the country's ongoing political crisis. In your view, what is it?
Well, it's not a coup d'etat, but I would add that it's not a coup d'etat yet. The military had good intentions. Martial law was declared basically to preclude some pretty large demonstrations and strikes that were scheduled for later this week in Bangkok. So the army initially assessed this as a security problem, not a political problem. The real problem, of course, is what do you do on the day after martial law? And that is a political issue. So the military now, as you pointed out in your report, is gathering together the protest leaders, the stakeholders in the government, and they're trying to work out a closed-door political solution. I have to tell you that's going to be an uphill struggle for the army. The political differences here are very stark. The rhetoric has been very harsh. And most importantly, the military is well equipped to enforce martial law. They are less skillful at being political mediators. Kan Young?
Well, Paul, it's day 2 of martial law there in Thailand. Help us paint a clearer picture in our heads. Help us paint it clearly by telling us what martial law exactly looks like in Thailand right now.
Well, it's It looks like hardly anything at all, to be honest with you. I cruised around the city a bit last night on the evening of day one of martial law and was hard-pressed to find any soldiers. In the morning yesterday, of course, we all woke up here to see soldiers deployed at key areas of the city, but it was a non-confrontational deployment. And I might add, since Thailand is a country that's had 18 military coups, the presence of military soldiers in the morning is not that surprising. It was very non-confrontational. The Army went out of its way to try and market martial law as non-partisan, as only for security purposes. As the day wore on yesterday, and it was apparent that the protesters were going to behave themselves, the Army withdrew and drew down some of that deployment. So now there's not much to be seen around town unless you go near some of the protest sites where protesters remain. I must say, however, that does not mean that things will remain peaceful over the next couple of weeks. The military is going to have to be very careful to appear nonpartisan and treat each camp equally as it moves forward with these very difficult negotiations.
Right, Paul, so we wonder what's next for Thailand. I mean, what are the Army's intentions? Will we see an all-out election or the appointment of a new government?
That also is a good question. I think what the Army is going to try and do is give half a loaf to each side. I think they're going to have to say, we'll have elections, but we're going to push those elections out a little bit to give a appointed government, or a neutral government, as they call it, time to enact reforms in the interim. I don't know if that's going to be a lasting political solution here, because whenever they have an election, be it 6 months, 3 months, or 1 year, it is very likely that pro-Thaksin political parties, not necessarily enamored of Thaksin the man, but of Thaksin-type politics, are probably going to win that next election, which basically takes us back to where we are right now. An electorally strong rural area, ready to have elections, pitted against a less electorally strong, a upper middle class elite in Bangkok who can't seem to win elections.
Well, from the outside looking in, we're having this vivid imagination of catastrophes and what it could happen in Thailand. But apart from that, apparently it's quite peaceful, just another coup in Thailand over there. But what about the economy? How is it faring amid this political unrest? Is martial law the last straw for Thai investors?
Well, the economy's been battered a fair amount, as you can imagine. Over the long haul, since 2006, we've had protest and political instability in 2008, 2010, and now again 2013, 2014. And so chronic political instability, of course, is something investors have trouble with. They're willing to overlook short-term instability, thinking that the government can get a handle on things and will eventually have an elected government and some sort of stability and policies put into place. That has not happened here. And in fact, the two most important policy initiatives of this government, flood control and national transportation infrastructure, are now in tatters, and that has a direct and negative impact on Thai commercial activity. So I think investors are concerned, both over the short term and the long term, about what's happening here in Thailand.
Well, certainly a situation that we need to keep a close eye on. Paul, many thanks to you for speaking with us. That was Paul Cogley, Director of PQA Associates, live for us from Bangkok.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gonyong and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
More violence in Nigeria. This time, twin bomb attacks in a central city have killed at least 118, but authorities warn that toll could climb. Although no one has claimed responsibility, the Islamist militant group Boko Haram yet again is being blamed for the blasts. Arirang's Yudian has more on the latest in a series of sustained attacks that's leaving the African country reeling.
2 car bombs exploded in Nigeria's central city of Jos on Tuesday, killing at least 118 local civilians. One ripped through the center of a busy market. Another half an hour later outside a nearby hospital, killing some rescue workers. A local official says the death toll could rise further as rescue teams continue to recover bodies from the smoldering debris. It's not yet clear who's responsible for the attack, but Boko Haram is the prime suspect. The militant group has been carrying out a series of bomb attacks across the center of Nigeria, trying to overthrow the government and create an Islamic state. If Boko Haram is to blame, Tuesday's double bomb blast would make it their deadliest single attack in 5 years. President Goodluck Jonathan issued a statement late Tuesday expressing sympathy for the victims and reassuring the public that the government remains committed to winning the war against terror. Terrorism in Nigeria has been under the international spotlight ever since Boko Haram kidnapped more than 200 schoolgirls back in mid-April. The girls who remain unaccounted for are reportedly being threatened to be auctioned off to become wives of militants. The campaign to get those girls back continues in Nigeria.
There is hope. There is a lot of hope. We believe the girls are safe. We believe the girls are alive. And we believe with the tremendous support the Nigerian military is getting, we believe that the girls will be rescued and returned home.
But fear is rising. As evident by this latest attack, Boko Haram is becoming increasingly vicious in their campaign for an Islamic state. More than 1,000 people are believed to have been killed by the militant group this year. Yurian, Arirang News.
Let's shift gears to a different story now. It's a special day for those in the nation who already tied the knot. Today is Married Couples Day in Korea. Recent data shows the state of marital union in the country is stronger than it was just a decade ago, with more couples staying together for the long haul. Our Connie Kim takes a closer look at why.
May is the most popular month to get married in Korea, and also the month it celebrates Married Couples Day. To celebrate the union of marriage, the National Association of Mayors at the National Assembly has been hosting an annual ceremony for the past few years. At this year's event, Yoon Ha-won and Lee Myung-won were named this year's Married Couple of the Year.
I thank my wife for supporting me during our 51 years of marriage.
This day was established by the Korean government in 2007 as a way to get people thinking about their marriage and, more importantly, their spouse.
Married Couples Day falls on May 21st for a reason, with the numbers 2 and 1 symbolizing the union of two people. It's a day to remind couples of the importance of a happy marriage.
More Korean couples are staying happily married these days. The nation's divorce rate peaked in 2003, which experts attribute to the spillover effect from the Asian financial crisis, but the number has been on a gradual decline ever since. Analysts say couples are also putting more thought before saying, "I do." Statistics Korea data shows that the average age men and women get married has gone up by more than 2 years in the past decade. On average, men now get married at 32 and women at 30. Experts also say that couples are now openly discussing their problems more than they used to, which makes for healthier and longer-lasting relationships.
With the society becoming more open, couples are visiting counselors, and efforts made by such institutions have started to play its role, giving couples a chance to think about staying together.
According to the Married Couple of the Year, the secret to a long and happy marriage seems to lie on one simple principle.
Married couples fight because one doesn't think about the other person's situations. Sacrifice is also important to maintain a happy marriage.
Connie Kim, Arirang News.
You know, it's just beautiful here in the Korean capital these days, which is probably why I see more and more people outside.
It's getting warmer and warmer by the day. Let's find out whether similar days are ahead of us just by checking with our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle?
Good evening, guys. Now, today is Toman here in Korea according to the lunar calendar, which indicates the beginning of summer. Now, it's already felt like summer in recent days, though, and tomorrow we can expect another warm and sunny day across the nation, although there will be a slight drizzle in the eastern coastal regions. And while it's been warm during the days with the high temperatures up into the 30s, the mercury still drops at night by about 10 degrees on average, so do keep that in mind. Now going over to our temperature readings, we'll start off the morning at 14 before reaching up to 28 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will peak up to 31 and 24 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops out at 24, Dokdo at 17, while Mangkungang tops out at 16. Now, as for the weather conditions down in Jindo at the site of the ferry disaster, it's going to be clear day tomorrow, and the tides and winds are expected to be calm as the neap tide period continues. Well, that's all I have at this moment. I'm Michelle Pargan. Back to you guys.
Thank you for that, Michelle. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching. For our viewers in Korea, have a wonderful rest of the evening. This has been Daniel Chen.
And I'm Moon Gun-young. To those of you in other parts of the world, have a great start to your day, and we hope to see you right back here, same time tomorrow. Take care.